And he came to me and I said, I believe in you. I think if you want to be a nurse one day, you can do it.
All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. Good morning. Thank you again. We have lots of classes that are now tuning in as well for day 2 of Hispanic Heritage. We are so excited to bring speakers from around the community to share their wealth of knowledge with all of our boys and girls out there. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. Please welcome Dr. DesRosiers.
Welcome to Junior Achievement Hispanic Heritage Career Speak Event. My name is Isabella and I am one of your hosts for today.
My name is Eric. Today we are hosting the event live from Liberty Park Elementary.
My name is Ulady and we want to welcome our speaker, Ms. DesRosiers. Let's get started.
What was your dream job as a kid?
I had many dream jobs as a kid. When I was very little, I wanted to be a teacher, much like Miss Tues. And then I went to school, and when I started learning English, I ended up wanting to be an astronaut. Anybody here ever want to be an astronaut? I loved the planets and the stars and everything. And the older I got and the more I studied at school, I decided, well, maybe an astronaut might not be such a great idea, because how many women back when I was a little kid were actually astronauts? Now there are many. And I decided that I was going to be a pediatrician because I wanted to be with little kids. But I started college and I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I didn't really like all the classes I needed to take. And like Miss Hen said before, what are you good at, right? What are the things that you love to do? And I realized I really loved psychology, which is the study of people, right? So what makes you different than me, different than him, different than Miss Tues? And I really loved studying that. And because I spoke Spanish, I also studied Spanish in college. And when I studied Spanish, I was reading all these amazing books in Spanish. So I thought, maybe I'll graduate college and I'll become a professor. Maybe I'll teach Spanish. Maybe I'll teach psychology. And I did that for a very long time. I was a professor in a college, actually a few different colleges. But then I moved to Florida from New York, and I was a dean, which is kind of like a principal, just like your principal. It's kind of a principal, but at a college, at a university. And I really liked doing that. And then one day, somebody reached out to me and said, Fabiana, we got the best job for you. We want you to come and interview to be a CEO of our Hispanic organization. And I said, that's interesting, because I am Hispanic. So I said, tell me more. Should I keep going? Or you have more questions, right?
Yes, we have more
So
questions.
anyway, that's how I became the CEO, Chief Executive Officer, which is kind of like a head principal of the Hispanic Human Resources Council.
Tell us a little bit about the work you do.
Perfect question. So at HHRC, we have 2 child development centers on our campus. Anybody know what a child development center is? They're preschools. Did anybody here go to preschool when they were a little kid? See, most of you did. When I was a little girl, I did not get that chance because my parents were immigrants from Argentina and they did not know anything about preschool. So our preschools are called New Pines and Luciano Martinez. And those preschools are where the little kids, ages 1 to 4 years old, so the 1-year-old, the 2-year-old, the 3-year-old, and the 4-year-olds, they come and they learn. So they learn math skills, they learn basic alphabet so that they can learn to read, and they get ready for kindergarten. So if you go to preschool, you have like a little mini graduation, like a transition to kindergarten, and that's what we do. We get them ready so that they can come here to Lake Park Elementary and other elementary schools. And our preschools are bilingual. Hablamos español and we speak English. And everything that the kids are learning are in both languages, because most of them, like me, come from another country. Does that answer your question, Eric?
Wow.
What is your biggest challenge with your work?
What is my biggest challenge with my work? I think the biggest challenge we have is that most of the families that come to us are Hispanic. So 92% out of 100% are Hispanic. And they're coming from another country. Most of them are from Cuba, Venezuela, Guatemala, Colombia, Mexico. There are some other, and some from Puerto Rico. So when they come, they don't have a lot of resources, a lot of support. So what we try to do is overcome their challenges by giving them the resources that they need so that they can do better, right? Helping them find food when they're hungry, helping them find homes when they get homeless. If they lose a job, helping them find jobs. So what we try to do is help support the family so that when they go to the kindergarten system and the K-12 system, they have everything they need so that they can be successful and they can do better as a family. So the challenge is more the challenge that the families bring to us.
Okay. My next question is, what is the most rewarding about your work?
What is the most rewarding thing about my work? What I love is being around the children. I love every day going into work. They're outside playing in the playground, laughing and running, and there's just so much happiness. How many kids here love recess, right? I mean, it was my favorite time, right? It was my favorite part of the day, right? Because you get to be free and you get to be with your friends. And I love walking into the classrooms and seeing all the artwork and all the hard work that the kids put into their classroom, because it means that they're learning. And it means that one day, my little kids, my 1 and 2 and 3 and 4-year-olds, are going to be 5th graders like you, and someday they're going to be doctors and cure cancer and be a surgeon and, maybe a teacher like Miss Stube, or maybe you will be someone like me who goes back and helps your Hispanic community, goes back and helps the little kids learn and do better so that they can grow up to be doctors and architects and principals and teachers.
Can you tell us about a person who significantly influenced you?
A person who has significantly influenced me. Well, that one is easy. I would have to say it was my mom. And I know everybody loves their moms, right? Moms are pretty special. And I have 2 kids of my own. But my mom, she didn't speak English. And when I went to kindergarten, I learned English. And she only had a high school degree. And every time I would come home from school, she would say, "What are you studying, Fabianita? Let's study together." And so she learned English with me. I taught my mother English, and I was a little girl. And then one day when I was in high school, she said to me, La educación es todo. Abre las puertas. Education is everything. It opens the doors. And she said, you have to study to be anything you want to be. If you want to be a beautician and cut hair, you need to study. You want to be a doctor, you need to study. And I was really proud of my mom because not only did she teach me the importance of education, but she went and she got her associate's degree and she studied. And she was pretty old then, older than me, and I'm pretty old right now, so. And she got a degree, she went to college. So she is the person who taught me that education is really important. And even the subjects that you find really hard to study, it's important to keep trying because tomorrow you're going to realize that that subject was really important and helps you as an adult.
Can you share a specific cultural tradition or practice that holds special meaning for you and your family?
A specific cultural tradition that holds special meaning for me and my family. Well, I did mention that I am from Argentina. Anybody here from Argentina? No? So, in Argentina, the really big thing is eating steak, eating alfajores, drinking mate, which is kind of like a tea that you serve in a gourd with a straw, and you sip it and you pass it around and you share it with your friends, and watching soccer. And I spent all my childhood watching soccer with my father, and it's something that I do with my son. And of course, I'm sure some of you might have heard of Lionel Messi, right? I love him. And so for me, watching soccer is pretty special. So eating good Argentine food, drinking mate, and watching soccer are the things that I have done with my parents and I have done with my kids. And when I go to Argentina, I do it with my family there.
Okay, so this is my question. How do you incorporate your Hispanic heritage into your everyday life and work?
How do I incorporate my Hispanic heritage in my everyday life and work? I think that's easy because the special place where I work, everybody speaks Spanish. The children speak Spanish, the teachers speak Spanish, the families speak Spanish, the business leaders that come and help work at our schools, at our preschools, they speak Spanish. So the language is really, really important. And it allows me to connect with people in my community much stronger than just speaking English. Because I can go and I can speak to anybody in English. But when I speak Spanish, it gives us a different connection. And in Argentina, we are like part of our tradition is to hug and kiss everybody. The first time you meet somebody, you say, hola. That's what you do. It doesn't matter if you never met them, you just hug and kiss because now you have a connection with them. So speaking Spanish, I think, is something that allows me to continue my Hispanic heritage because Hispanics, we come in all shapes and sizes, all different color hair. I'm blonde, all different color skin. Soy blanquita, right? But what we share together is our language and our culture.
Are there any Hispanic figures who inspire you?
Hispanic figures that inspire me. Well, when I was younger, I really didn't have any. And then when I went to college and I started reading Spanish literature, I thought, this is really interesting. And there is an Argentine writer called Jorge Luis Borges, who's very, very famous, and Gabriel Garcia Marquez, another very famous writer. And they spoke about the difficulties and the challenges in their countries, but through a magical lens. So when I was in 5th grade, I loved reading Madeleine L'Engle's A Wrinkle in Time. She was an author that wrote about like this other time period, right? It was almost like being in the universe and traveling through time. But these writers actually wrote about the challenges politically, economically, that their countries were going through in a way that almost hid the idea that it was political and economical. So I learned a lot from them, but I still go back. If I have to say who my favorite person is, Lionel Messi, because I love soccer. He's pretty cool. He was a little kid from Las Pampas who just grew up from the time he was 1 year old playing soccer, and he worked so hard on not just his right foot, but his left foot on kicking the ball. And when my son was little, he liked to hit the ball with his right foot, and something that Lionel Messi taught was always kick with your left foot. And what that means is to use your weakness and practice it so it's not a weakness. So if your weakness is your left foot, kick with your left foot. If your weakness is your right foot, kick with your right foot. And that's with everything. If your weakness is math, study math really, really hard, right? So I think there's some really important people out there that even if they are a soccer star, can teach us a lot.
What does Hispanic heritage mean to you?
What does Hispanic heritage mean to me? I think what that means to me is that I can look out at the over 20 countries, right, that speak Spanish, that have Hispanic cultural traditions, and that we can embrace them as one, right? Everybody has something a little bit different, whether it's the music you listen to or the dance that you dance. You know, tango is very different than salsa, very different than flamenco, very different than the cumbia, the rumba. And even though some words might be different in the different Hispanic cultures, we share a lot in common. And so for me, being able to celebrate how I was raised and who I am today, and to celebrate with the little kids that are at the Hispanic Human Resources Council is really important. And at the start of every Hispanic Heritage Month, we do a little parade. So all the kids get dressed up in all the stuff of the different countries, the typical dresses, and we play all the different music, and we have little foods to try, and we celebrate the things that not only make us a little bit different, but really make us the same.
Okay. What words of wisdom do you have to further on generations?
What words of wisdom do I have for future generations, you said?
Further generations.
For further generations.
No, it says future.
So I would say to you two things. The same thing that my mom said to me. La educación es todo. Abre las puertas. That means education is everything. It opens the doors. So study hard, do the best that you can, find something that you love, and then do that every single day, because the more you do it, the better you will be at it, right? And don't forget your left foot, right? The things that you're not really good at, don't leave it by the side. Work on that too, because maybe someday you'll be good at that too. And you might be surprised that even though one day you thought you'd be the teacher or the doctor or the astronaut, like I thought one day, you might grow up to be running a business, or like me, running a preschool, or a principal, or a business leader, or a politician. And the second thing would be, if you are Hispanic, do not forget your Hispanic heritage. Speak the language, eat the foods, learn about other cultures, and share with others who you are, because you're pretty special.
Okay, now it's time for Q&A.
Hey, what important messages we have there that you shared with us. We have some questions. Right, we'll start with my friend over here, nice and loud.
If you had to pick any other career, what would it be?
Any other career? If you're making a career change, what would it be?
If I had to pick any other career, well, I already was a professor, and now I'm running a preschool. I would say that I would be a scientist. I really love doing research, and I love biology. So when I was in high school, I went to a hospital to volunteer, and I went to the lab where they do what they call biopsies, and they would take little pieces out of people to study to see if they had cancer or not. So for our young lady who wants to cure cancer. And my parents' friend was a pathologist, and so he would sit under a microscope and look at these cells, and he would show me, and you could see like that there was cancer in the cells. And he moved, I was living in New York, he moved to Los Angeles to be the pathologist for the superstars. So all the celebrities, he's the one who looks at their cells. He's not the doctor in the hospital room, but he looks at those biopsies, those little pieces of cells, to make sure that they are okay, and then he gives it to the doctors to help cure the cancer or the disease that people might have. So doing the research, because it's kind of a behind the scenes job, and it's kind of a cool and interesting one, and something that's very important.
I'm sure the Hispanic Council would be upset if you were to move into the area of research.
Yes, I think they would be.
But that does sound like an interesting job. We have another question here.
What is the most challenging thing in school?
What
Like
is
while she was going through school? What's the biggest challenge that you faced?
so? When I was younger, I think it was learning English. Then when I started going through school, I think it was understanding what the educational system in college was like. My parents never went to college, so I didn't understand what college was really all about, and I didn't have anybody that could help guide me. And when I went to college, I had to try and learn a lot by myself. So there was a lot of challenges with that. And then, well, even though I loved math through high school, when I went to college, it was a whole other level of math. And I said, nope, not for me. So I switched to psychology. So there was some challenges with some math classes, which, it's a little bit harder than it is in high school. But I think it was learning how to get through the system. And when my kids went through college, it was easy for me, because that's why I became a professor. I wanted to be that person who has a doctorate. So I'm Dr. DesRosiers. That means a PhD. That means I studied a lot of years. And And I wanted the kids, when they went to college, to know that it was okay not to know how to go through the college system, that they could ask questions and I could guide them. So I really specialized in working with those freshmen in college, and I created these programs that were really, really special, and I got a national award. That means out of everybody in the United States, I was one of 10 people who got an award for a special program that I put together. And so the hardest thing was going through college, but I kind of kicked with my left foot, so to speak. Worked really hard to get through college, worked really hard to get my master's, worked really hard to get my doctorate, and then I went back to college to teach others how to go through college. So turn your weakness into your strength.
Thank you. This is a good question. It means right what we're just saying. You want to go ahead and ask it? Wants to know what school you studied at.
What school? I was living in New York, so I went to a state university in New York called Binghamton, which, if you know your state universities here in Florida, it would be the equivalent of a UF or an FSU or an FAU, but it was in New York. And then after I finished my 4 years there, I went to Fordham University because I studied so hard. I got a scholarship, so I didn't have to pay for my master's or my PhD.
Well, that's impressive right there. Absolutely. We have one more question. Do you have a specific success story that you can share with us with the work that you've done?
So I have lots of success stories from being a college professor. I still keep in touch with 3 or 4 of my students. One of them was a Hispanic woman who never thought she was smart, and she never raised her hand in class, and she was always embarrassed to open her mouth and ask questions. And she took one of my classes, and I was kind of a crazy professor. I was always like, come on, let's do something fun. And we would do silly things in the classroom to learn what was really important. So those things called theories or hypotheses or, terms, reading about research. It actually is in real life. And I would show movies and I would make it real for them. And she one day said to me, she said, I found my voice because you had a voice. And she now has her PhD and she's doing really great stuff. Another young man came to me and he really wanted to be a nurse, but he failed. His freshman year, he failed. That means he got all Fs. And he was a terrible student. And he came to me and I said, I believe in you. I think if you want to be a nurse one day, you can do it. But like my mother said, you have to study really hard. So when you start taking your classes, every test you take, I want you to come. And this is college. He doesn't have a mom and a dad there. I said, but I want you to come and tell me how you're doing. And after every test, he said, I got a D. Great, keep at it. I got a C. Great, keep at it. And then one day he was getting all A's. And it wasn't until he graduated college that he started working. And then 10 years later, so 10 years after college, that means he's in his 30s, he actually not only became a nurse, but now he has a master's in nursing. And he's also teaching nursing classes. So here is a student who was failing and getting Fs, and because he worked really hard and somebody believed in him, he was able to do well. And now I have the same stories with my little kids, right? They're studying, they're coming to a great elementary school like Lake Park, and they're studying really hard. And then, you know, we have some of our kids that are now lawyers and doctors right here in West Palm Beach. So the whole
And I was going to allow for one more question, but it was, this was our friend over here, what would you say to people that are giving up? But you already answered it. Believe in yourself and find those that believe in you as well. We're going to wrap it up, but really, the ultimate message and takeaway for me was, and I'm definitely not going to try to say it in Spanish, education is everything. It opens the doors, and in Spanish, it is...
Educación es todo, abre las puertas.
All right, can we go ahead and give Dr. DesRosiers a round of applause for coming out today?
Gracias. Thank you for having me today. This was fun, and I hope that you learned something. And if you have any other questions, you can always ask through the
Reach out and we'll answer those questions for you.